Hello and welcome back into another episode of Tobacco Road and Abroad. My name's Gareth Parsons, joined by Aiden Moore. Aiden, how are you doing?
Doing all right, doing all right. Tough week for Carolina sports as always. Uh, doesn't get better. Uh, but I'm really happy to go into what happened last week and build upon about what's going on in this week of football, fights, and much more.
Yep, and like you said, it doesn't get much better. The Panthers fall to 1-5. Um, let's just say they had a chance to win this game, unlike the Bears game. I mean, they were in it. The
Yeah,
Falcons kind of pulled away there at the end. I mean, Panthers lost by 18. They were down by 8 at the end of the third quarter. I mean, Dalton looked good. I mean, he was 26 for 38 for 221, two TDs, two INTs. People are talking about we need to give the job back to Bryce. That shit would have been 38-3 with Bryce. No, like we said, no offense to Bryce, but he has a future elsewhere, just not on our team. Not
yep,
on our team.
yep, yep, yep. Just another fourth quarter opportunity blown by the Panthers defense, and not much to say, but looking forward to the next week. We have the Commanders, and it's not looking like it's going to get any better.
Yeah, the Commanders are currently were a before the preseason, or I guess like they weren't looked upon highly, but they're the number one offense in the NFL right now.
Yep,
Um, Jaden Daniels is the highest completion percentage, has like the most passing yards,
probably
and
an MVP candidate, not just an
de-
offensive rookie of the year candidate.
definitely MVP candidate. Could be offensive player of the year, but I do think Derrick Henry has a decent argument for being OP
Hmm.
as well. But
Yeah,
I mean, maybe they could
definitely,
surprise
definitely a
us.
rookie of the year candidate.
It definitely could surprise us. But you never know. Looking at our schedule, I'm hoping that we can, pick up a win here or there. It'll be hysterical.
What?
Thanksgiving weekend, the Panthers host the Chiefs. They have the
Ooh.
opportunity to do the fucking funniest thing around. Last year, a struggling Raiders team who had no hope of making the playoffs absolutely ass blasted the Chiefs. I'm just saying, the bandwagoners will lose their minds. And Aiden, I don't care if at that point 1-8, 1-9. I don't care if we're 2-9 after that game. If we win that game, I am fucking clowning the Chiefs. I don't care if as a result of that game we're 2-9. I don't care. I
Yep.
will. We could lose ever. I will clown the Chiefs all off season. I'll be like, "Hey, scoreboard, is that your friend? I kill him."
He died like
Yeah,
bitch.
he died like bitch. Yeah, no, that's. I don't care if we lose. I don't care if we go 2-15. If we beat the fucking Chiefs, I'm gonna be like, fuck you. But no, in terms of other stuff happening around the NFL, let me look at last week. I'm trying to remember if there's some stuff that stood out to me. I mean, Bears dismantling the Jaguars in London. That was very impressive. Ravens Commanders. I mean, the Commanders were eventually going to drop a game here or there. Commanders drop one of the Ravens. Eagles take care of business against the Browns. Packers Cardinals. What we expected. Buccaneers absolutely ass blast the Saints. Lions Cowboys.
And Jerry Jones is confused why his team still sucks. You don't know if it's the same roster and same build up and same everything. How are they still losing? Jerry Jones says as he withers away. No real surprises here. I mean, the Cowboys kind of suck, and the Lions are one of the best teams in the league. So I don't know what we expected from this game, but that was fun to watch if you're a Cowboys hater.
I will say Jerry Jones. Apparently, there's the Dallas Cowboys radio. We're talking about the loss, and he got mad that they were talking about the loss and asking him questions. about their offseason moves, and he got mad. And I just want to say I have a response to that because he was talking about how like sports media needs to butt out. If you're the official like radio like show of a team and they're eating absolute shit and subverting expectations, it's kind of their job to question the offseason moves.
Yeah.
Like that's like the whole point of sports media is to ponder stuff like that. And I just think, like you said, I think he's just withering away if he doesn't get that point that like if your team, I mean, we talk about the Panthers. I mean, you don't see Tepper going, why are the sports media talking about the Panthers? I mean, we're 1-5. I mean, that's one more game that I thought we were going to win this year, but you know. In other words, I mean, Bills, Jets. I mean, Jets, even without Salah, looked kind of. I'm not a fan of that. I mean, kind of like firing a coach after a 2-3 start. Unless like he did some heinous stuff that's been swept under the rug, I really don't get it. Because like the Giants arguably looked. I mean, sorry, not the Giants. The Jets arguably looked worse. The Bills didn't look great either. But just saying, for the turnover machine that people prop Josh Allen up as, he has some of the fewest turnovers in the league right now. Meanwhile, Mahomes is up there for the most interceptions. And we're not calling him an interception machine. Just saying.
Yep.
Anything else really to have add to the NFL? Because I don't feel like much happened in the NFL this week besides the Cowboys getting absolutely spanked on national television.
Mike McCarthy should be on the hot seat, but we know Jerry Jones isn't going to fire his ass. I don't know why. Anyway, looking forward to Week 7. Should be a good lineup of a couple games. I am interested to see the Browns versus the Bengals. Two teams that are woefully underperforming this game. I hope to see Joe Burrow have a strong showing in this game against a relatively underperforming Browns D. And as always, I hope Deshaun Watson does not play well. Also, looking ahead to this week, one big game that I will definitely be keeping my eyes on is Lions-Vikings. I want to see the QB battle of Jared Goff and Sam Darnold, a front runner for the MVP candidate, which is something I did not expect saying. But it should be a good game. Two offensive powers that I'm really excited to see. I have the Lions in this game, but the Vikings have been surprising me so far this season, so I'm excited to see just what unfolds with that. As we said before, Panthers versus Commanders, it's not getting better. And for our Monday night slate of games, we got Bucks-Ravens, which should be a good game, and Chargers-Cardinals, which should also be a game that exists, but it's only on ESPN Plus, so we won't have to be we won't be subjected to forcing ourselves to watch that.
Yeah, and one game I'm interested in this weekend is we've got a Super Bowl rematch. The Chiefs are at the 49ers. I know this seems to be the narrative every season since the Chiefs' first Super Bowl win. I think this is the weakest 5-0 team I've ever seen. Like, I mean, arguably, like, what champions do is they find a way to win. Like, and that's what the Chiefs are doing. But the Chiefs have looked abysmal. Like, they look like dog shit. I think the 49ers get them here. I mean, it's in San Francisco. The 49ers have looked spotty, horrible. They either are it's just been kind of a weird season. They blow out teams they're not supposed to, but then they like lose or have a close game against teams they're not supposed to. Like, they should not have lost the Cardinals. They arguably should not have lost to the Rams. Vikings, I'll give them, like, the Vikings are the hot team right now. So I'll give them the Vikings. But yeah, the 49ers have not looked great. And both Super Bowl players from last year do not look great. Trying to think of anything else I'll add. I mean, like you said, Lions, Vikings. I mean, Eagles, Giants. I think that's going to be rough one to watch on the eyes. We've got the shit bowl this week in the NFL version of the shit bowl. We're subjecting the English to this. We've got the 1-5 Patriots versus the 1-5 Jaguars. I'm sorry, Sarah, but this is my shit bowl for the week.
I feel bad for the war crimes we have subjected to the British. They're probably confused why we keep on sending Jacksonville over, but this is just how it is. And I do not expect, I will not be getting up early to watch this game.
I won't either, and I feel bad. With that offensive line, I'm not getting up to watch a Patriot get killed in the center of London. That just seems wrong. I'm not going to get up to watch Drake May die in the middle of London.
Get up and go to church. Don't watch this game.
Don't watch an American patriot be killed in Britain. That's just not right for several reasons.
Go to the chapel, pray Sunday morning. Don't
go to brunch. Go to brunch.
I'm going to mass. I'm going to mass before this. I'm not watching this.
Yeah, but no, I think in terms of the NFL, do you really have anything else to add? I mean, Chargers, Cardinals, I don't really feel like we're missing anything. Like, yes, the Chargers are a lot better this season, but I think they're so hard to watch because they have such a great quarterback that they're not using. And yes, I get like the whole argument about bringing Harbaugh on was they wanted a great coach who could actually like win. So like, we wouldn't associate losing with such a great quarterback because Herbert was the bright spot of that team. And like the only bright spot. Bro, he's the only quarterback I could think of that would lose and have 550 passing yards and no interceptions and then still lose. But do you have anything else to add, or do you want to move on? Go ahead and move on to college because I feel like this is a pretty uneventful weekend outside of that.
Let's move on to college, but before that, I would like to give a moment to say rest in peace to Tylee Kraft. The former UNC wide receiver has unfortunately died. He died on October 12th, moments before the Georgia Tech game. Tylee was a cancer patient who was suffering from a rare form of lung cancer and dropped out of football a couple years ago to focus on his fight against cancer. From all sources around UNC, they said that Kraft was an absolute fighter and he was an inspiration to all those around him. And it's very unfortunate to see him gone, and his absence will be very missed in the Tar Heel community. Our prayers go out to the Kraft family, and we just want to spend a moment to remember him and his legacy as a Tar Heel. For once a Tar Heel, always a Tar Heel. And I'm personally glad that we were able to have and share some time with him in his football career, and his impact on the Tar Heel family will never go can never go overstated. It can never be overstated how much he meant to the Tar Heel family.
Yeah, it was something that was definitely tough to hear about. I think all four of like the four corners are, for those who don't know, four corners: State, Carolina, Duke, Wake Forest. I think all four of them like post something about it. Like even the Barstool accounts, like that's how like big of an impact this guy had. Like even State and Wake Forest Barstool was posting about this. It wasn't just like the athletic departments. This is like full on like troll pages that are normally like shit slinging were even posting about this. So it was really awful thing, but
really unfortunate. But as that, we segue into the topic of college football and the Georgia Tech UNC game played as a tribute to Kraft. UNC showed some good life and looked very promising throughout the entirety of the game. What I said before was I believe that UNC just collapses in the fourth quarter, and unfortunately, that trend seemed to happen again today. Well, on that day when UNC kept it close and actually made a comeback against Georgia Tech in the fourth quarter, looking as if they were able to send it into overtime. But unfortunately, Jamal Haynes broke off a 70-yard touchdown to put Georgia Tech up as time expired. Georgia Tech was running the ball to bring it into overtime, but unfortunately, the UNC defense collapsed and was unable to stop Georgia Tech from scoring right after tying the game. Not much to say about this game other than the fact that the trend of UNC collapsing is still remaining, and the future for this team is looking worse and worse. I was happy with our performance up until then. I wasn't necessarily happy with the fact that our defense wasn't getting the necessary stops on Georgia Tech, but they had an opportunity to close it out, but they didn't. And not much to say about that. Just going into a bye week this week, hopefully Mac Brown can patch up some necessary stuff that needs to be patched up on defense, and hopefully we can try to turn this season around in the coming weeks.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get to catch much of that game, so I don't really have anything to add. I guess on NC State's end, we played a lot better against Syracuse than I think we did. Think we were going to. I mean, unfortunately, we didn't force any turnovers like I said we needed to, but we kept it relatively low scoring in a offense that's one of the top in the country. We held them to, I think, what was it? We held them to 24 points. And honestly, caused a few, I guess, not turnovers, but I guess we'll call them turnover on downs. We had Syracuse had like 2 turnover on downs. We forced a missed field goal. But a lot of my frustration of this game boils down to NC State's 3 turnovers. CJ's interception, he's a true freshman quarterback. He's going to throw a pick, We're lucky he hasn't turned the ball over more, but he's got 3 picks on the season in 5 games. Honestly, for a true freshman cornerback that's been thrown to the wolves, I'll take it. That's not bad. If you've got a true freshman quarterback out there playing in tough situations and he's only got 3 picks, you're going to be pretty happy. And I'm pretty happy with his with his performance. But my issue is with the other 2 things. I feel like these other 2 turnovers boil down to coaching. First of all would be Kendrick Rayfield's fumble. He was running through traffic. Any running back knows you should, when you're running through traffic like that, you need to use 2 hands. He was not. In my opinion, if he was running through that crowd with only 1 hand on the ball, that's coaching. That means to me that they are not drilling that in practice, which honestly does not surprise me with the issues that and frustrations people have had with Robert and I and Dave Doran. And the other one where Cedric Bailey fumbled the ball on a blindside hit. It was just a complete wash in pass protection, and 2 unblocked rushers came off the left side. CJ tried to have the line slide at the last minute, but it didn't work out. And to me, that's coaching as well. It wasn't like they were all out blitzing. They weren't mugging the line. For those of you who don't know, mugging's where they walk the linebackers up in between the D linemen to really fuck with the quarterback. They weren't even doing that. It was just they rushed 4, and somehow we had 6 in protection, and somehow a DN got a free shot. It might have been a backer that they sent, but they only rushed 4. But it was this dude got a free shot on Bailey. He got hit from behind, so that ball squirted out. All 3 of those turnovers were in the red zone. So winnable game, losing by 7. 3 red zone turnovers. I mean, even if one of those was a touchdown, that game goes to overtime. I mean, I'm proud of the way the team fought back in the end. It really got out of hand. NC State, I think, went down. We were down 27-7 or 24-7, but we fought back to 27 or 24-17. Scored twice in very quick succession. Was able to get the ball back, but unfortunately could not recover the onside kick. Came close. A little bit of a Dave Doran rant here. I know I'm kind of not disheveled, but kind of like all over the place this episode, but I've been trying to make a video about this and it hasn't come off in like the tonality that I want because I never want this to come off in a disrespectful way. Like Aiden and I, like when we call for a coach to be fired, we don't want them like, we realize that does mean an individual loses their job, and we'd never advocate for an individual to lose their job. Like, I do think Dave Doran has a place in coaching. He doesn't deserve to be jobless. That's not the point of this rant. My point is him and I are not fit to be the coaches at NC State anymore. Dave Doran has an overall record of 83 and he has an overall record of 86 and 64. 3-5 in bowl games, and he's 44-50 in ACC play. A lot of that's in part due to his first season going 3-9, which it's his first season. I'll give him that. 3-9, you're taking over a Power 5 program that didn't have a lot going for him at that point. After firing another coach, a lot of the good players graduated / transferred out once they heard that Tom O'Brien was fired. But then he had another inexplicable 3-9 season in 2019. So I'm not going to make many excuses for him. But with any good criticism, I will start with some of the good stuff he's done for NC State. He's the winningest coach in NC State history. Since 2021, he is 15-13 in the ACC, which I guess is okay. Since 2020, he's 22-16, so not bad. And overall at NC State, he's got a winning record, which, for NC State coaches in the past it's kind of not common thing, and he's given us some really good and entertaining moments that core memories of mine of NC State. So I will say he does deserve praise for that. Some most exciting games I've watched have been under him, but a lot of this is outweighed by what I'm going to bring up next. So in my opinion, I don't think Dave Doran was an upgrade from Tom O'Brien. I've tweeted about this before. I have NC State's and the NC State fans in my DMs telling me I've got no idea what I'm talking about. Quick background info on Tom O'Brien, NC State's previous coach. He was fired for poor performance. His recruiting wasn't great, but he was able to do a lot with a little. Our recruiting for a Power 5 program was in the bottom half of all recruiting classes, including Group of 5. But let me put it this way. I'll just give you the facts because I don't know where I'm going. So Dave Doran is 7-27 against ranked teams. Tom O'Brien was 7-7 against ranked teams. Dave Doran's 1-12 versus AP top 10. Tom O'Brien was 2-2. At this point, so we gave Tom O'Brien 6 seasons. He was 40-35 and 22-26 in the ACC. Do you know where Dave Doran was in year 6? Nowhere close to that. And quite frankly, we're paying more for only one more win a year than Tom O'Brien averaged. In his good years, we're paying about one more win better than Tom O'Brien was. And yes, Tom O'Brien had some inexplicable losses, and they're like, people on Twitter tell me, Dave at least beats who he's supposed to. Does he really? I want you guys to answer honestly. Does he really beat the team he's supposed to? No, he doesn't. So, yeah, I don't think Dave Doran needs to be our coach. And at the very least, if we do keep Doran, we do need to get rid of Robert and I. The offense has looked absolutely just... For a man of his supposed talents, the offense looks fucking pitiful. And there's just been a general just lack of aggression, just really conservative play call. And I just don't know what to say. The offensive line's bad. Robert and I is a former offensive lineman and offensive line coordinator. So you think he'd be able to root out these issues. I do think Dave Doran has good game plans. The problem is, like Aiden and I have talked about here, college sports is all about how you adjust. And Dave Doran does not adjust. He came on the Tennessee game with a great strategy. Before the Grayson McCall pick 6, it was 10-3 and NC State was first and goal going to tie against Tennessee with 2 minutes left in the half. That is a great game plan. Okay, we're not going to talk about how Tennessee's offense is kind of gone downhill and lost steam after the Arkansas win, but at that point, they were the highest flying offense in college football, and we held them to 10 first half points before the pick six. Great game plan. Didn't adjust when Tennessee started scoring points, didn't try to keep pace. That's a failed game plan, in my opinion. In my opinion, he waits too long to switch out of his conservative tendencies until it's too late. Some examples for me of this prior to the Tennessee game: Wake Forest 2021. NC State was down big to Wake Forest, storms back, doesn't get the onside kick, which you're not going to get those, but still. We were torching Wake Forest when we decided starting to put the ball downfield. Another example, Clemson 2022. We're ranked 10th in the nation. We go into Death Valley. We're up, I think, 17-3. Dave Doran starts trying to run the fucking clock out mid-third quarter. We lose by 10. Same thing with the Wake Forest game this year. We go up by double digits, tries to run the clock out mid-third quarter. You know how that works. Dave has been asking the fans for patience. It's year 12. He is one of the longest tenured Power 5 coaches without a conference championship. And what has been the last straw is him blaming the fans for the team's poor performance, saying the fans don't show up. I'll give him the Wake Forest game, but he's also got to remember that was following the hurricane, where students probably went home to go check on their families. If I'm being honest, students were probably at home, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was fall break too. Yes, should the students that were there have left in the middle of the third quarter? No. But he acted as if this was a reoccurring problem. He was upset about the Syracuse game being at 8 p.m. He said, at least our fans can drink all day. And just his reasoning for us losing that he's giving to the media is not great. When we lost by 40 points, or when we lost by 35 to Clemson, he blamed it on C.J. Bailey, the quarterback. C.J. Bailey had one turnover that game and threw for like 250 and 3 touchdowns. That's not on him. I feel like I'm kind of going in circles, but this whole Dave Doran experiment, I feel like needs to be over with. Yes, he was a good hire on paper, but I just think the lights are too bright for him. I'm not saying he doesn't have a place in coaching, because clearly, what he did with that Northern Illinois team those last 2 years at NIU was special. BCS bowls, got them to an Orange Bowl. You can't deny, and he's done great things for state. But I think, similar to people's arguments about Tom O'Brien, I think we've hit a plateau. And I think we need to move on. Honestly, I'd take Tom O'Brien back. I realize dude's too old to coach now. And I realize that's controversial, but I'd take Tom O'Brien over Dave Doran right now. Tom O'Brien, was he a little bit too much of a dice roller? Yeah, but at least we would go down swinging. We wouldn't go down with Dave going, oh, well, just, wasn't our day. But at the very least, Anaya's got to go. There's just no creativity in how he tries to move the ball. When one thing starts working, he decides to stop doing it. Case in point, the Wake Forest game. Wake Forest corners were, for those who don't know, Wake Forest corners were bailing, which means they were playing either a lot of cover 3 or cover 4. And CJ Bailey was making payday on comeback routes. We stopped running comeback routes and we started playing into their game plan. We started throwing stuff that, cover 4 and cover 3 are good at stopping. We started running the ball, trying to run the clock out and shoot clock mid-third quarter. That's just not going to work. And I wish I had answers of who we need to hire, but I don't know. It also just doesn't sit with me that Dave Doran has wasted a generational defense. Even if you include the Tennessee game and the Clemson game this year, on 5 occasions over the last 5 years, NC State's allowed more than 30. 5 out of 60 games has allowed more than 30. That's pretty fucking good. That's better than 99% of the defenses, outside of maybe Alabama. when you squander it with a really weak offense, I'm at a loss. Do I have candidates in mind that I'd at least like to replace Anai or Doran? No. I really do think both have to go because one example I'll provide this, I'll stop the rant here. Aiden, I know you're probably like, what is he talking about? But I think Dave Doran is the one that's hindering the offensive coordinators. Look at what Elijah Drinkwitz did at App State, and then not this year at Mizzou, they're struggling, but the last few years at Mizzou prior to this one, banging offense, like the offense is well-oiled machine. Tim Beck, offensive coordinator for the national championship winning Ohio State team in 2014. NC State's offensive coordinator. All of a sudden, we forget how to move the ball. Like lack of creativity. Tim Beck leaves. Current head coach at Vanderbilt. What does he do? Beats Alabama in a shootout as the head coach. Now, and I know I've been critical of Anai, and I'm going back and forth of whether I think this is Anai's fault or not for the lack of creativity and play calling. But after like some reflection, I think it may be Dave who's hindering these offensive coordinators. Because if you look at the resume that Robert Anai has, and I will take back what I've said about him being, carried by the talent around him. Robert Anai made a very mid-ass Syracuse and Kyle Schrader look amazing. Look like the scariest offense out there. He made Taysom Hill and BYU look like a national championship contender. He helped develop Nick Foles. And he looks like an incompetent toddler with NC State. So in my opinion, I think Dave's got to go. He's just we've had 3 great minds as our offensive coordinator. One of them worked out. Just Drinkwitz got a better offer from App State as the head coach. But we've squandered 2 of some of the best offensive minds in college football, in modern college football, and made them look like complete and total doofuses. So that's my Dave Doran rant. Sorry, I know that was probably a lot, but I'm trying to figure out a way to put that into words. And after some reflection, I feel like I needed to clarify my thoughts on Anai.
Absolutely.
Still think now, at the end of the day, I still think Anai could make some more aggressive play call, but I do think Dave Doran may be slightly hindering him after some reflection, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see. Now that I think we're done talking about our local teams, are there any games from last weekend you went ahead on? I know there were some pretty entertaining ones.
Ooh, one game that I definitely want to talk about right now is the unexpected shootout that happened, Illinois versus Purdue. This game was interesting to say the least. Illinois started out the first half really strong, up 24-3 to Purdue, but just fell apart in the second half, to say the least, like allowing 17 unanswered points in the third quarter and falling apart even more in the fourth quarter, where Purdue was up at a time, up 43-40 against Illinois. Illinois was able to bring it to overtime on a last-second field goal, but it took the defensive effort on Illinois to eventually stop a 2-point conversion that would have sealed the game for Purdue. This game was very interesting to me because I had Illinois as a dark horse Big Ten contender. But Purdue has just proven to be a very tricky team for a lot of top teams, historically speaking. But this Purdue squad this year has been very weak, to say the least, as they only have a 1-5 record and 0-3 in conference play now. There's just I think there's a lot you could take away from this game. What I will take away is the fact that Illinois did find a way to win, and they were able to stop the bleeding with Purdue, and eventually come away with a much needed win. Because I think this win would have been devastating for them. Do you have any thoughts on this game, or did you see it?
The Purdue Illinois game, I unfortunately did not get a chance to see it, but this Purdue team is not looking great. It's just like you said, Illinois was kind of like they weren't a playoff lock for me, but they were definitely a playoff dark horse for me where I definitely could have seen a path for them. It was just I don't know. I didn't watch as many games this past weekend as I would have liked, but I guess thinking back on it, I mean, Illinois' offense looked pretty good. I think it was just their defense really let them down that game. I mean, allowing Purdue to get 536 yards is just absolutely absurd. Particularly, what were they? They were especially this being a home game. Now, granted, Purdue could be better than we're giving them credit for. I mean, Purdue opened the season up with a pretty difficult slate. I mean, Notre Dame, obviously, Oregon State, Nebraska, Wisconsin, not ranked teams, but, respectable teams. And a lot of these games were actually, in fact, on the road outside of Notre Dame and Nebraska. They were on the road. So, but does this really knock them out of contention? I mean, no. I mean, especially with Georgia still being a contender after struggling with probably the worst Power 5 team in the nation, Mississippi State. They are awful.
Oh, I'm
And
definitely not saying that they're out of contention. I'm just saying that
yeah,
this is a red flag if you're an Illinois fan. But I was very happy to see them come away with a win and actually find a way to stop this monumental momentum that was in Purdue's favor. I can't explain it, but they were just on fire, and their offense was firing on all cylinders, and Illinois was found a way to stop it. And having a crucial sack on that 2 point conversion uh, really saved Illinois. And I think if Illinois is able to make a win streak, and they have a couple more tough games coming up on their schedule this week, they play Michigan. If they're able to really patch up some of the loose ends, I definitely do see Illinois being a dark horse contender for the Big Ten. But that's just my takeaways from the game. Keeping with the theme of the Big Ten, were two other very important Big Ten matchups that happened this week. One of them being Ohio State versus Oregon. This game was back and forth constantly. I really enjoyed watching this game. Just when you think Ohio State was going to run with it, Oregon comes back and goes on a little bit of a 10-point run. And then after that, Ohio State comes right back in there. It was a very tight game, to say the least. Did you see anything from this game that really stood out to you?
the only thing that really stood out to me is just, I guess, Will Howard's kind of clock management towards the end there. He kind of took off on a run as time was expiring, and that's just something you cannot do. And then the genius of Dan Lanning to put 12 defenders. Yes, I know that's illegal, but because of a loophole in the rules, if you put 12 defenders on the field, that specific penalty against the defense does not require there's no real harsh penalty. I think it might be 5 yards,
Yeah.
but it's not really a harsh penalty. So what he did was he put 12 defensive players out there, which, yes, it's illegal, and yes, there's going to be a penalty, but it stopped Ohio State from being able to find an open deep shot. And genius, if you ask me. They've already made a rule patch, so teams can't do this again. There's a little called penalty in football. I forget what it's exactly called, but it's essentially where it's a defensive penalty that can be called in in-a-game situations where the defense, they use a loophole in a rule, but not to the extent Dan Lanning did. But say, for instance, Dan Lanning just sent 20 out there they'd call this. I'm actually going to look this up real quickly. What it's called. It's essentially the only penalty in football that does not have a set punishment. But essentially, when this penalty happens, the referees can deem fit whatever they please. Like, say, for instance, Oregon sent 20 players out there and they called this penalty. They could have awarded Ohio State a touchdown within the rules. They could have put time back on the clock. They could have given them – there's no such thing as a 45-yard penalty in the rules, but they could have given them a 45-yard penalty. I actually want to look this up. I saw it because I heard people talking on a podcast. They weren't aware of this rule. They're like, well, then why didn't Dan Lanning just send 20 people out there if there's this loophole? But there's something where it's like it's essentially the penalties like again it's has something to be like against the spirit of the game. Like you don't see this penalty very often. Like the last time we saw this was a Patriots game where you've probably seen this clip on Instagram where it's the Patriots kept taking delay of games because they were punting from midfield and they wanted some more leeway trying to pin, I believe, the Colts back. Or no, the Jets back. They wanted to pin the Jets back, but the Jets kept declining the penalty. And they both called offsetting ones on each team. So it wouldn't affect them as much. But, like, they didn't call that because, like, it's kind of against the spirit of the game for a team to continuously take penalties. I mean, another way this penalty could come in is say like the defense is trying to stop the clock without a timeout. Mm-hmm. And if a defensive player jumps off sides in certain scenarios, the clock does get stopped. And say they abuse that to like get a stop to get the ball back, that would be like that's what it was called. I actually want to look up what this is called so I don't sound what is it? Against the spirit of the game. Penalty. Football. There we go. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what this called. We'll come back to it. Aiden, is there anything else you want to add? I want to find it.
There is something I want to add. So one thing that I was hearing in the sports world and what I really think is a very interesting takeaway from this game is that when it comes to Ohio State, so far the overreaction that Ohio State's fans have had towards games like this has been the correct reaction to have. In the national championship game against Alabama, Ohio State was blown out under Ryan Day, and there was this notion of, is Ryan Day really going to create a strong defense for Ohio State to make a championship run? This was seen as an overreaction, as in, come on, Ohio State fans, you just made it to the national championship. How can you have this like notion that Ryan Day is not the guy for you? The next following 2 years, where Ohio State has C.J. Stroud, Ohio State was unable to have a sufficient defensive game to match the absolutely legendary offensive performance that was provided to them. If I'm an Ohio State fan, I definitely will be questioning if Ryan Day is the coach for Ohio State, because this is another pivotal game that Ohio State should have won. That would have been a landmark win for Ohio State that was just fumbled away. This Oregon game was very important for both Ohio State and Oregon. Oregon was able to come away with it, and Ryan Day, the narratives of Ryan Day are still going to accumulate. Now, I'm not saying that Ryan Day should be fired, but if I'm an Ohio State fan, I'm definitely going to be taking a serious look to see if Ryan Day is the future that Ohio State needs, because he has so far not been able to capitalize on these big moments that Ohio State needs to capitalize on if they want to be a powerhouse in this new playoff era.
Yeah, I'd agree. lately they've just been struggling, like you said, in like these big like games. I mean, another one that comes to mind is the previous game against Oregon a few years ago. That was just kind of like Oregon ran all over them. It was just not pretty. I mean, the Michigan games of late. I mean, I'm not saying they need to fire Ryan Day because I mean his average record, like any other team would be like, you're crazy to fire a coach for going 10-2 or 11-1.
Yeah, I'm sure UNC or NC State would love a coach like Ryan Day, but if I'm Ohio State, I am a fan that is expecting excellence out of my team. And Ryan Day so far has not been able to provide the excellence that Ohio State fans so desperately think they deserve. And this is going to be seen as a win that really marks a shift in the Big Ten. We knew this coming in. Old Big Ten versus a new Big Ten. What's the outlook on what the Big Ten is going to look like in the next 5-10 years? And this win just goes to show that the new Big Ten is here to stay, and it's going to be a force to be reckoned with. And old Big Ten needs to adapt or die.
Yeah, that's how I honestly feel about the ACC as well. Just kind of like we've got to adapt in this era of like conference realignment.
However,
yeah, it's just sorry, go
one,
for
in,
it.
one interesting that I will say that will act as a segue, and if you want to continue on this Ohio State thing, we can continue on it. But there is an interesting narrative that I do want to bring up.
Okay, go for it.
So I saw a statistic the other day that I think it was a plurality of Big Ten teams that had to cross over 2 time zones for an away game have an exponential chance of losing. Ohio State was in this case, but one team that was able to defy this was Penn State this weekend against USC. Penn State, traveling more than 2 time zones over to USC, was able to eke out a win against a struggling USC team. Penn State was able to come away with the win in overtime, winning 33-30 against the USC Trojans. And this was another interesting game, in my opinion. There was a time where it just looked like USC was going to absolutely run away with it. Going into halftime, USC was up 20-6. And it was just not looking good for the Nittany Lions. But they were able to readjust and come back swinging in the third quarter, where we saw 2 consecutive touchdowns unanswered by USC going in to the third quarter. And USC was only able to respond in that quarter with a field goal. And with that, the game was eventually tied up and sent into overtime. And in overtime, Ryan Baker, the kicker for Penn State, was able to kick field goal and eventually seal the game for the Nittany Lions. And I feel like this narrative that we need to start asking about realignment, where teams need to adapt or die. The ability to overcome the traveling difficulties that come with this realignment is something that most teams are going to need to find a way to account for. Luckily, the Nittany Lions were able to come away with it today. But I think it's just going to be a very interesting conversation around what home field advantage is in this new realignment era.
Yeah, that's what I will say is my big obviously I will say Penn State has been a team that has surprised me this season. I can't really get a grasp on where they are. That's what I have liked about this college football season is you can't really tell who's good and who's not. Like even the good teams are somewhat struggling. Like Penn State struggled with Bowling Green, but then go and I mean they don't convincingly beat USC, but they won a game that I thought USC was going to jump up and get them and upset them. But like you said, Penn State fought like they were dogs. They got it done. And that's honestly something like, that's something I applaud. Like, in college football, it's getting like you said, with these longer distances, it's getting exponentially harder to win, especially in conferences like the ACC and Big Ten, where, you're traveling multiple time zones. And I know for this reason, I will say in other conferences, they've added stuff where this helps. Like, for instance, if you play Hawaii, I think it is, I think if you play Hawaii in the Mountain West, you're mandated to have a bye week either I think before or after that, like the immediate week before, just because. And granted, in Hawaii, going from like California to Hawaii, you're only going like 3 time zones. But for some of those teams in the middle of the country in the Mountain West, you're going like 4 or 5 time zones. And I think that might be something we start to see is a lot of, say, like, or at least within scheduling, this may not become a rule, but you may see from like if teams start looking at this data, you may see teams start doing something where it's like they may only schedule 1 or 2 of these new teams a year and put their bye weeks before or after it. And then, possibly seeing I guess you could say original schools, that conference band together and be like, hey, we're really only going to play each other and then play these wackos once or twice. And then you force kind of like the newer guys to play each other more. Say like the Big Ten, you force like, say, Oregon, Washington, whatever. You could be in the Big Ten, but half your Big Ten games are going to be each other.
It's like, I think it would be convenient if, so let's say we have a set schedule for the teams that are on like the west side of the Big Ten, and we have Oregon play Washington and USC and UCLA, and that can be their like side of the conference. But might as well just throw a couple other teams in there, like Arizona, Arizona State, and we could like call this sect of like, you could call it almost like a subdivision of a conference, and it's all West Coast teams. And what would be a name for a subdivision of college football teams on the West Coast?
I mean,
I think we could call it like the Pacific Athletic Conference, and then put a number behind it, so we could like really figure out like the amount of teams that are in that subdivision of college football. I think this would be a really revolutionary idea, and I don't think I think we're really onto something by like perpetuating this. I think we really need to bring it up. I think it would be a good idea to have like this region where teams on the West Coast play each other. So that way we can avoid like teams unnecessarily traveling 5 time zones over to play each other.
That does make sense, and just say, dare I say it, we have another name for the teams in the eastern part of the Big Ten. Say, dare I say it, have a Big Ten and what's it? We call the other division what? What was it? Pac-4 or possibly,
Maybe, but I think we would have to add other teams into that Big Ten, but then also make that like subdivision its own thing. I think that would be really cool.
No, definitely, and the 2 teams that won those divisions would compete for,
they could play in LA or something, and it would be at like the end of the year, and it could be like the like conference title game between like the Big Ten and then whatever this West Coast team is, this West Coast like subdivision is, and they could all meet in like LA and then play for something.
There could be a parade.
There could be a
name
parade
it after a flower.
Holy shit! I think we're on to something. Anyway,
did we just invent the Rose Bowl?
Holy shit. Oh my gosh. Oh, no way. That's crazy. No way. Anyway, on to games that matter. Texas was unfortunately down for the first time against Oklahoma in the first quarter, where Oklahoma took an astonishing 3-0 game. And then Texas, faced against all odds, had to score 34 unanswered points to beat Oklahoma in an edger where it was 34-3 Texas. Quinn Ewers returned for the first game after being injured and threw for almost 200 yards and 1 touchdown. Any takeaways from this monumental, very important Red River rivalry, Gareth?
Quinn Ewers had a slow first quarter. His first 2 drives, he kind of looked abysmal, but then he kind of settled in and then just started absolutely torching Oklahoma. Like,
Yep.
did he start the game off with a pick? Yes. Was his first pass attempt a pick? Yes. But, turned it around, got what needed to be done. Texas's defense definitely helped out as well. I mean, Texas's run game was also kind of lethal that game. Just kind of all around dominance. Other games that weekend.
Let's keep with the theme of the SEC and talk about Ole Miss LSU. LSU was able to really show the might of Death Valley and showed why they're one of the toughest places to play. And LSU was able to come away with the 29-26 win. And Anakin cosplayer Dart when asked after the game, Jackson Dart said in his hood, "We have to win out, buddy. I don't think you are going to, but love the effort." Any takeaways from the two most unlikable teams in the SEC?
Hot take: if Ole Miss wins out, they're not a playoff team. Because if you look at their remaining schedule, unranked Oklahoma, unranked Arkansas, number 5 Georgia at home, unranked
that would put them in. That would put them in.
Unranked Florida, and unranked Mississippi State at home. I
don't think they're going to beat Georgia.
Yeah, not Georgia at home. I don't think they're going to win out. I mean, do they have to win out to make it? It's like that Jalen Hurts quote. Theoretically, we are next.
Yes.
I mean, theoretically, you do have to win out, but are you going to? I mean, you don't have to win out, but you do. I will say, LSU fought back at the end there. They took it to overtime. Nussmeier, 22 of 51. 337. I mean, it was a dogfight. I mean, Nussmeier under 50% completion percentage, Jackson Dart around 50. On this type of game, bodies flying everywhere. I mean, Ole Miss kind of had this game. They were in control. Like they didn't have it on lock. It was always like a 1-score game, but it was like they were had the game in control, and then kind of at the last moment there, LSU kind of struck back, tied it to go into overtime, and then won in overtime. Florida, Tennessee. I think Tennessee's just run out of gas. I've talked to a lot of Tennessee fans that I know, and they just said that all of a sudden out of nowhere, Heupel's gotten really conservative with this play call, and that all of a sudden it just looks like the offensive line's given up. Like this one guy. Or this wasn't one of the friends I talked to, but this one guy on TikTok I saw who's a Tennessee fan was like, our offensive scheme's really good. It takes advantage of the wide splits, but he's like, that doesn't matter if it takes us 10 years to hand the ball off and they're in the fucking running back's lap by the time he gets the ball. But, Tennessee didn't look great. I mean, they were able to edge out the win. They scored the game-winning touchdown out of the power I. I will say, I will give them that. Love me some old school formations. And I'm not talking tricky power eye. No, I'm talking 4 running backs. Or no, I'm talking 3 running backs in the backfield, 2 tight ends, ran that shit downhill. Any other games? I mean, we had Pitt and Cal. That nothing really interesting happened there.
Want us to talk about Kansas State versus Colorado?
Oh, yes, that game. I did get to watch some of that game after the state game. It was entertaining. That game was, I will say, entertainment value. Colorado, I will say, is better than we give them credit for, but nonetheless, they're 4-2. Their playoff hopes kind of dwindling. I mean, as Jackson Dart says, theoretically, they do have to win out.
Theoretically, everyone does, but it's not theoretically, everybody wants to win out. I mean, and everyone's got to win out, but okay, go off.
I don't think Colorado can make the playoff anymore. Just looking at their schedule, they've got 3-3 Arizona. They've got Cincinnati. They've got Texas Tech, an unranked Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. Not a ranked team left in sight, and none of those teams are close to being ranked. And, I think it's unrealistic for Colorado fans to have expected a playoff appearance this year. I mean, this is Dion's second year, and Dion inherited a fucking shit show. I'm talking like he inherited like New Orleans after Katrina. Nothing going for it. Looters everywhere.
Yep.
What's your take on the game? I'm
Colorado had a very good game. I remember people talking about the ending. Wasn't it just did you catch the ending on it?
Yes, the ending. Colorado scored.
And then
Colorado scored
Kansas.
twice in 2.5 minutes to go up by 4.
Yeah, and then
And then,
Kansas State just aired it out to their receiver, and it was
Avery Johnson fucking shredded their defense.
yeah. That was I saw that highlight play. It was pretty good. I was impressed by Colorado's showing. Kansas State just still proving that they're they're probably gunning to be the top dog of the Big 12, but I'd probably give that to BYU right now because they're undefeated and they've been proven to be like a formidable foe for almost like everybody they play. And Kansas State's only loss this season remains to BYU, and BYU absolutely dogged on them 38-9. So as far as the landscape of the Big 12 goes, I don't see anything changing because the big players in the Big 12 still remain the same, and I'm just mainly, if I'm looking at the outside in to the Big 12, my eyes are solely focused on BYU right now.
Yeah, they certainly are. I will say the team to watch. They're exciting. They're like high flying offense. They get it done. They're scary. They're definitely a team that I feel like not even a dark horse for the playoff. They are a playoff contender sitting at 14th. They're 6-0.
Yeah.
Closest game was they had a close one against SMU, but SMU, they're looking fun and frisky about now too. Like, they're ranked. I wouldn't call them a playoff dark horse. Like, I don't think they'd make the playoff, but
yeah,
they're repping. They're doing good they're making the ACC look good.
shout out to Jake Ratzlaff, the BY Jew, first Jewish quarterback for BYU. So
And that's
BY
not us
Jew.
being insensitive. That's what he calls himself.
That's what he calls himself, and I love that for him.
That's literally on his NIL merch, so you can't come after us. That's literally on his NIL merch. You can look it up.
Yeah,
you can look it up. Huh?
We'll withhold any Jewish jokes from here on out. But shout out BYU.
Definitely. Only other game I really like to point out is Utah ASU. Utah drops another game, drops out of the rankings. Cam Rising gets hurt again and is eligible for an 8th season with the Utah Utes.
Yes.
And you may be saying, well, Gareth, we're 7 games in. Well, Cam Rising came into the season with an injury and didn't play till this game. His first game back, gets injured. Dude, I saw some sort of graphic where next season, and with how Cam Rising looks now, they're like, Cam Rising looks like a pirate, like who's like way past his prime, trying to retake his life. Any other games you want to touch on from this week?
Nah, I want to look forward to week 8 now. Let's highlight some games this week and give our predictions for them.
Sounds good. I guess I'll start off. I mean, one game that I guess could be interesting is Michigan, Illinois.
Oh, absolutely.
Michigan's currently favored to win that. Not necessarily who I think is going to win that. I mean, Michigan has shown they really don't have the offensive firepower this season, and they really have only had firepower against really bad teams. And I know Illinois' defense looked kind of bad in their previous game, but prior to that, their defense had been pretty, not good, but it had been stout. Like, they'd held their own. Only gave up 24 to Nebraska, gave up 21 to Penn State. Like,
give me the Fighting Illini. Give me the Fighting Illini.
Yeah, give me the Fighting Illini. I mean, obviously, Alabama, Tennessee is probably that's everyone. I think that's the game of the week, in my opinion. The Alabama, Tennessee.
Georgia, Texas is probably the game of the week.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that one. Georgia, Texas is the game of the week.
Yeah.
But I think Tennessee's look kind of slow. Their offense, they said for some reason the fans are complaining. Heupel's play call and the offensive coordinator's play call has been pretty conservative. With the explosive upside that their offense has, it just in the past 2 or 3 weeks, it just has not looked itself. You got anything to add there?
I want to see a big game from Jalen Milroe on this Alabama game against Tennessee. I think he definitely needs to show out, and I got Alabama in this game.
I do too. I just think Alabama they need a get right game. They struggle with South Carolina, which are a good team, by the way. I do think South Carolina are a good team. They're better than their record states.
Absolutely.
But like I just think Tennessee, and sometimes the offense isn't like I just think that their offense isn't clicking. Their defense looks great, but I just think their offense isn't clicking. Which that I feel like that's the case for a lot of the teams this year that have good defenses. Their offense just isn't really clicking that well. So
yeah.
Georgia, Texas. I think this is going to be an app. I think this is going to be a dogfight. I do think Texas will come out on top, particularly with how
just dominant they've been.
In Georgia, their past 2 games, they've either looked really, really lackluster in the first half or really lackluster in the second half. Second half of last game against arguably the worst Power 5 team, Georgia gave up a 24-point lead. Mississippi State cut it to 7 at one point and ended up losing by 10. Previous game, they let Alabama jump out to a 28-0 lead. I think Texas is one of the most well-rounded teams in the nation right now. I really don't see many weak points in Texas. And I think if you give anything to that Texas team, they're going to take it and run with it. If you are Georgia, you cannot have a first half like you had against Alabama against Texas because they will not let you back into that game. Their defense is a lot stouter than Alabama's. And if you're ahead, you cannot have the collapse they had in the third and fourth quarter that they did against Mississippi State at home for that matter. They cannot have that type of collapse because Texas will make them pay for that. Yeah. I think Texas takes this one. I think it's close, and I think it'll be a good game, but I just think this Texas team is too good.
Yeah.
And there's too many. Georgia is still a scary-ass team, but I just think there's same thing with Alabama. I just think there's too many red flags for them when Alabama if Alabama plays Texas this season, which I don't think they do. But in terms of this Georgia game, I think there's too many red flags in this Georgia team, and there's too many. They're still good, and I still think they'll be a playoff team, but there's too many alarm bells going off for me. And with this game being in Austin, I just think this is a recipe for disaster for Georgia.
Absolutely.
You have anything to add on the game or just?
No, nothing to add. I got Texas in this game. I think Quinn Ewers is going to have a good game. It was a little rusty against Oklahoma in the first half, but really lit it up in the second quarter. Comparatively speaking to that very lackluster first quarter that he had. I think Texas is going to come away with it, but I do think Georgia is going to be sound in all 4 quarters because they are going to be of the mindset of they can't lose this game. They already lost against Alabama. They don't want to be the team that just chokes away big games. I expect to see a very close game between the two.
I agree. Big game in the ACC this weekend. Miami, Louisville hasn't had the season they've hoped. They were ranked as high as 16th, kind of on a 2-game slide right now. Was able to pull it out this past weekend against Virginia. They came back. Virginia had the upper hand on them for most of the game. Miami coming in this game 6-0.
I think Cam Ward's going to find a way to come away with the win on this one. That's just how he's been.
Yeah, he's just so calm and collected under pressure that I think they're going to come away. I think Louisville's going to give him a good fight with this being in Louisville, Kentucky. But like you said, I just think Miami's too good right now, and they're on a roll.
Yeah.
looking at other games,
I
another
think
possibly big.
the Virginia Clemson game is going to be pretty close. Virginia's been proven to be a pretty good team, and they're pretty sneaky if you don't like jump out on them. I think if there is going to be an upset this week, I think it would be Virginia Clemson, but I still got Clemson on this game.
Yeah, Virginia is one of the teams where they've had a crazy turnaround. Past 2 years, they've been abysmal at football, like not great. Like it was embarrassing how bad they were. And I honestly thought they were going to struggle this season with how they came out against Richmond. But they've turned around, they've righted the ship, they've looked good. They beat Boston College. They took Louisville to the wire. I mean, this game's in Death Valley. I do think Clemson will pull away, but I think they'll put up a good fight. Um, Notre Dame Georgia Tech could be a good game, especially if Georgia Tech's able to get their run game going. I mean, that's kind of what they're known for.
Neutral
Georgia
site
Tech,
game, which is a little bit weird considering that I believe, it's technically still an away game for Notre Dame. It's at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. But I think this is actually going to play in Notre Dame's favor since it's not in Georgia Tech's home field. Just the bigger environment, I think Notre Dame's more suited for it, and they've been pretty sound after the NIU loss. So I got Notre Dame in that one.
I do too. I mean, I guess yeah, that's about as non-neutral as a neutral site game gets. It's
Yeah,
literally like 2 miles from their campus,
I don't
but
know. Notre Dame fans travel pretty
they do
good.
travel. They do
Yeah,
travel pretty good, and I will give them that.
I think
Um,
that's why they had to move the stadium.
Definitely. The only other game that I'd say is this. I mean, it may not be like a crazy one. An interesting one could be nah, I don't think. I mean, West Virginia, they gave number 11 Iowa State. They gave them a good fight. I do think Iowa State or not Iowa State. I do think West Virginia may jump up and get Kansas State this game. Kansas State has looked good, but I do think they, like you said, they've been shaky at times. They got blown out by BYU. I think West Virginia could jump up and get Kansas State here on Saturday night. I think it's a distinct possibility that could happen.
Hmm.
Middle of the season, home game for West Virginia. I think West Virginia could possibly jump up and get them here. What about you?
Uh, I like Kansas State on this one. West Virginia, I know they've played some tough games, but I think Kansas State's performance against Colorado kind of solidified for me that they're an offensive power, and I think they're just going to outdo West Virginia in this game. I think it'll be close. This is like West Virginia at night is always like an interesting environment to play in, but I think Kansas State's going to come away with the win. I think they're too strong on offense, and they've hammered out most of their issues that they've had against like teams like BYU, and I think they're going to win this one. One other game that I would like to bring up, I think the last game that I think's worth mentioning in this segment would be Indiana versus Nebraska. Indiana coming in still undefeated, still hasn't. I believe they haven't been down once this entire season. And going up against Nebraska, Nebraska's unranked, but they're still 5-1. Very strong team. I really think this game's going to be interesting, and would like to know your takes on it. I got Indiana in it, but Nebraska is not a team to snuff at all. Their only loss comes to a very strong Illinois team, really showing that the Big Ten like scheme and like power structure has really changed this season. And you got any takes on this game?
Like similar to you, I think it's gonna be a close game. I just think Nebraska's a young team, and I think that's gonna get taken advantage of here. No, I mean no slight to them, but like you said, it's just I think. Excuse me, sorry, I think Indiana's too good here. I mean, I think they're on a hot streak. It's at Indiana. I mean, I'm not saying Nebraska's not great. I mean, I do think Nebraska is a good team, worthy of being ranked. I just think really young team. They're going into a hostile environment, and Indiana's having success like they haven't seen before. I just think this is a perfect opportunity for Indiana to extend their record out to 7-0. And that's no slight to Nebraska, but like I said, young team and experience. No, I'm not saying they can't do it. I mean, they're obviously very talented. So it's when you've got freshmen that are really talented, it's kind of a crapshoot of what you're going to get. I do think Nebraska will put up an impressive showing, but I think ultimately, if Nebraska does lose, I think their youth will play into a large factor of that, and just it will come down to like one or two plays where it's like, damn, like made the wrong read there, but that's a freshman play, or that's maybe the freshman, like that's freshman play. He took a sack there when he should have thrown the ball away, something like that, where it's like it's maybe not completely a total collapse, like a that obvious of a play where it's like, oh damn, pick six, but like I think it'll come down to just like little decisions that like a more experienced quarterback will have more nuance with. So
yeah.
Anything else you want to touch on this week? I mean, the only thing I'll say about the state game is I feel like if we're going to beat Cal, we're going to need to be strong all four quarters. Cal and the games they've lost has fallen apart in the fourth quarter. So if we're able to hang with Cal and just have a strong fourth quarter like we did against Syracuse, I think we'll be able to pull it out. I mean, this Cal team's on a 3-game slide right now, so I think we've got to kick them while they're down. But that's all I'll say about the game.
Yeah.
Any other you want to touch on? I mean, Oregon, Purdue. I mean, the only thing I'll say about that game is Purdue, when they see an AP in football, when they particularly Purdue with a losing record, when they see an AP top 10 team, they're licking their chops. But that was a 3-5 Purdue team that beat 3 AP top 2 teams. They were all number 2. They beat 3 number 2 ranked teams to go from 3-5 to 6-5 that one season. But this Purdue team is 1-5. So and they really don't have much going for them. So I think Oregon absolutely fucking steamrolls them. Like this isn't going to be close. What about you?
That's about it for football for me.
All right, you want to move on to your PFL stuff?
All righty. Well, this is a first PFL super fight that has happened under this new era of PFL. And for those of you who don't know, the PFL is the Professional Fighters League. It's a competitive league going up against leagues like the UFC and ONE FC and Strikeforce and other MMA organizations, and I'm really interested, and I'm going to keep an eye on this fight. It takes place in Saudi Arabia, and it's going to be early fights. Pay-per-view card starts at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just going through the card. One interesting fight in the pay-per-view that I want to bring up is Johnny Eblen versus Fabian Edwards. Fabian Edwards is the brother of Leon Edwards, the former UFC champion. I believe he's still going to be trying to make another run for the title. But Fabian Edwards, I'm really interested to see how he goes up against Johnny Eblen. Johnny is undefeated and looks to be like the underdog in this fight, but I really wouldn't count him out. Fabian Edwards, if he's anything like his brother, I definitely see him taking this fight, and I would just love to see the clinical striking that the Edwards are known for. The next fight, the co-main event, is going to be legendary women's MMA fighter Chris Cyborg going up against Larcia Pacheco. Chris Cyborg is probably one of the GOATs of female MMA. She's probably up there with Amanda Nunes. I really am excited to see Chris Cyborg fight. She is very technical when it comes to grappling, and I think she's got this fight in the bag. Really interesting to see her. Ever since any chance I get to see her fight, I try to make a point to see it. She had a falling out with the UFC, which is why she is now with the PFL, and I just really am excited for this fight and seeing where it goes. But this leads up to the main event. The reason why this Battle of Giants, why this card is called the Battle of Giants, is the true titans of the heavyweight world. We have Francis Ngannou going up against Raynan Ferreira. Francis Ngannou is an absolute beast in MMA. He's probably one of my favorite fighters right now. Probably the de facto baddest man on the planet, because I believe he is the true best heavyweight right now in the MMA world. Francis Ngannou is a former UFC champion that had his title revoked after he left the UFC with contract disputes against Dana White. And for those of you who don't know, Francis Ngannou decided to sign with the PFL because he believed it would be a better platform to promote better fighter play, which has been an issue with the UFC. And he is also trying to gain PFL roots and MMA roots in Africa, which is a big deal for Francis Ngannou, as he is from Cameroon and is an immigrant and grew up working in salt mines of Cameroon, and is an absolute just inspirational story for anybody. If anybody wants to look into his story, just take the time, look into it. He is probably one of the most warm-hearted individuals you could ever see on the internet, and just a positive outlook on all the adversity that he's ever faced. And I'm really excited to see him fight. He is an absolute, he's very devastating with his striking, and probably has the toughest jab and cross hook that you can have in MMA. I really want to see him tear Ferreira up. Ferreira was talking crap to Francis Ngannou about Ngannou's recently passed son, who died unfortunately a couple months ago, Kobe Ngannou. I hope to see Francis Ngannou absolutely dominate in this fight, and I'll be rooting for him. And I'm really excited to see this PFL pay-per-view. I think it'll be a good showing, and it's going to be good for the future of the PFL. If this card goes off well and is a hit, I think the case could be made. I want to see a cross-promotion fight of PFL champions going against UFC champions, so we can truly see who has the best athletes, because the UFC has the more loaded roster. You could probably say that they have a lot of strong talent, depth wise, but the top talent of all organizations can go up against almost all the top talent of any UFC fighter. So I'm very interested to see how this fight goes, and I'm interested to see what the future of the PFL holds. So that's my quick Aiden's MMA Power Hour segment, but I'll give it to you, Gareth. I know you wanted to talk about some of the international matches in the world of soccer.
Yeah, and I will just say about that PFL match, after the other fighter talking shit about his dead son, I do hope, and in the most professional way, he beats the fuck out of him. I want to see. I might find the illegal stream on YouTube this, but I want to see him get pounded into a fucking pulp after.
Yep.
The stuff he's been saying. But on to soccer, Pochettino's first 2 games as a U.S. coach, second one didn't go as hoped, but I'll just jump into it. Pochettino started off with a 2-0 win against Panama, which, he lost to Panama to get knocked out of Copa this past summer. Pochettino lined up exactly how we kind of thought he would in that 4-2-3-1 kind of clog in the middle, but also clog in the middle on defense. But then in attack, that 4-2-3-1 evolved into more of a 3-4-2-1 just to kind of control all areas of the pitch and then press effectively when we lost the ball. Looked good, limited minutes for a lot of our star players. Most of our guys are hurt. Pulisic currently battling an injury, but still playing through it. Reyna out with an injury. Wea out with an injury. Balogun out with an injury. I mean, the list goes on and on. Second game against Mexico, we had kind of a weaker lineup because Pochettino decided to send a lot of the players back to their clubs just to kind of go rehab as we're about to get into a really strenuous part of the season where, clubs not only have, their Premier League or their Italian league games, their German league games, they've got their cup games where it's, their cup, it's all the tiers have like a massive NCAA style tournament against each other. Like in England, they've got the FA Cup. Then they've got things like the UEFA Champions League, UEFA Europa Leagues. They're playing a lot of matches in a very short amount of time from about now till February. And he also doesn't want those players to get hurt because they're already battling injuries because the clubs, if the players get hurt on international duty, the clubs may not release the players back to us over the next international break because those players have a legally binding contract to that club. They've got no obligation to play for the U.S. It's just do they get called up and whether or not the country or the club lets them come play for the country. But I have a few more notes on the Mexico game. I didn't get a chance to watch the Panama game, but from what I heard and what I saw when I watched the recording back, we looked dominant, held possession, looked fluid. It looked like we had a plan. Against Mexico, we didn't look great. A lot of our players had gone back, like I said, to other clubs. So we saw a lot of new faces, people who either had very limited international experience or no international experience at all. So it was nice to see like their potential, but they didn't look well together. Like it was clear that these guys hadn't played together. Pochettino tried some different things tactically, but he is a new coach. What new coaches do in soccer their first couple matches is they play with tactics. And sometimes you've got games like this that aren't great. I mean, quick recap on the match. I was talking to Aiden during the game. Raul Jimenez had that once in a lifetime free kick, which, you got to live with that because it was a beautiful free kick. And that's a type of free kick you hit once in your career. And it's talked about on YouTube for decades after you score it. Second goal, I thought it should have been ruled out for an offensive foul because Tim Ream got yanked down inside our own box. But, he shouldn't have been playing with the ball inside the box to begin with. He should have just cleared it and kicked it as far as he could. But, like we said, it's a friendly. These people haven't played together. A lot of these guys are uncapped, if you know what I mean. Uncapped means they don't have international appearances until now. And then Mexico just played a good game. Mexico's looking better. They're improving. But, yeah, tactically, I think we could have been better. But, like I said, Pochettino's playing with the tactics. Second game, the U.S. switched to a 3-4-3. And just with how chaotic Mexico plays, they like to clog the center. They like to disrupt the flow of the game, kind of get under their skin, which is how you deal with a possession-based team like the U.S. Not having that third player in the center of the field, not having 5 in the midfield as opposed to 4. We just kind of lost that ability to overload the center and kind of stop Mexico from kind of playing that hectic style of soccer that they're known for. I feel like it was just kind of a perfect storm for the U.S. I think there's plenty to learn from. A lot of U.S. fans are calling for Pochettino to be fired. It's been 2 games. Let's just chill. They're friendly matches. They don't count towards our FIFA ranking. They don't count towards our coefficient. I think we just need to relax. Yes, was it a rivalry game against Mexico and would I have liked to win? Yes. And do we have many meaningful matches before the next World Cup? No. But this was Pochettino's first international break. And what that means is he had 3 days with these players before these games. Let me put this in perspective. Say Alabama hires Kalen DeBoer, and they did. Say instead of getting a full offseason, you give him 3 days before his first game. And you're like, guess what, buddy? You've got to win your first game in 3 days. It's not going to go so well. But, for only having 3 days with the team, I think the team looked a lot better than I thought they were, and I'm honestly proud. So that's all I have to offer. I'm excited for our first meaningful match, Nations League semifinal matchup against Jamaica, two-legged tie. First leg's in Kingstown, Jamaica, November 14th. Second leg is November 17th in, I believe, Dallas, Texas, but I'll double check on which city, U.S. city it's in. And that's really all I have. I mean, it was a friendly match. Second match, we sent a lot of our best players back to their clubs because of injuries, and we didn't want to injure them further. So, and like always, I can't complain. The players' safety does have to come first because their legally binding contract is to their club team and not the national team. So,
yeah.
The only thing I guess we touch on is, for those of you who don't know, earlier today, unexpectedly, Virginia's basketball coach Tony Bennett retired. The season starts in 2 weeks. Some teams like Eden's Carolina have already played one game.
That was a preseason match against Memphis. It doesn't count.
It doesn't count, but I mean, the season's coming up and he retired. Not much is known about it. Any initial thoughts? I mean, at this point, you kind of have to hope it's medical because Virginia are fucked. Like, they are fucked. Unless their assistant coaches, I mean, which I think their assistant coach is likely just going to take over and just kind of be like a Tony Bennett 2.0 for the season, or like run similar styles. But what's your initial reaction? Do you think this is going to harm or help Virginia's chances this season, just as we kind of segue into basketball over the next couple of weeks?
I think this is absolutely going to harm their chances. Your coach quitting 2 weeks before the season starts is definitely a bad omen for any season, no matter what team you are. I'd like to see how they respond to this, and it's definitely going to be interesting, especially considering the fact that ACC play is probably one of the toughest conferences to play in, especially in this new era of realignment. I don't know how like the basketball world is going to respond to new conferences and everything like that. And it's like there are more questions than answers right now. I have
Definitely, same here, and I do think it's going to hurt Virginia's chances too. The one point you brought up where you're saying you don't know how realignment, particularly with how these long distance conferences are going to affect basketball, I think it may affect basketball even more. Because college basketball, you're not playing one game a week. You're playing 2, sometimes 3.
Yeah.
And the travel fatigue is really going to set in. And especially with the California teams and SMU being added to the ACC and all that distance you've got to travel. And a lot of these teams having to make the trip out to California twice, sometimes 3 times this season. Like you said, Virginia's doing themselves no favors. And unless their assistant coach, just kind of acts as a continuation from Tony Bennett and doesn't change much. Unless they do that, I really think this could be a pretty rough season for Virginia. And then I know that Virginia's been on kind of a slight decline since their national championship. But I don't think this completely dooms Virginia, but like you said, it's not a good omen. And I think things could really get out of hand really quickly for Virginia.
Absolutely.
That was just something we wanted to cover quick. Aiden and I are being, obviously an ACC, mainly NC State, Carolina focused podcast. There will be a lot of college basketball talk in the coming weeks. And then especially once college football season's over, we're definitely going to shift into more of a college basketball type of mind, particularly ACC kids. So anything else to add, Aiden?
I want to add a little correction. I don't know if it's a correction, but I do believe that it's important to say about the Ngannou Ferreira comments. So there has been controversy over Ferreira's comments. I want to make them abundantly clear of what was said so the listener can make their own judgments. Ferreira, who speaks Portuguese as he's from Brazil, what was translated, what he said was, Ngannou has been going through a tough year in his life, but the toughest challenge in his life and in his year is going to be me. I'm going to be the biggest problem of his year right now. So what was said and what Ngannou thinks is that it was not translated to Ferreira, that Ngannou had recently lost his son, But with the comments, it can definitely be up in the air whether Ferreira was taking a slight at Ngannou and his personal family life and the happenings going on inside it. Ngannou personally has says that he has taken the high road and he knows that Ferreira is a good person and he means well. But people online are speculating that this was a very ignorant comment made by Ferreira. So I just want to give that the full context to the viewer so they can make their own inferences on it. Just please note that Ferreira is English is not his first language. He does have a translator that translates everything. So this may be more of an issue with how things were translated, but that's just me providing full context to the situation.
Yeah, and thank you. I hadn't actually seen the quote. I just heard what Aiden said about Ngannou's son and how there was controversy over what Ferreira had said. And
Yeah.
regardless,
So
I'd still hope, for Ngannou's sake and what he's going through, I do hope he wins. But
mhm.
but still, I mean,
That was just I just had to look that up to make sure that I got all the facts right. But yeah, I think it was a very iffy thing for Ferreira to say, especially considering the fact that if you're a part of the MMA world, you know that Ngannou has been through a lot. This is not, and the fact that he said himself, I think Ngannou has been through a lot, but I'm going to be the toughest challenge. That's definitely, in my opinion, a slight. But you can also chalk that up to sometimes translators just uh, aren't there's a lot of things going on when you're translating two languages at the same time and you're trying to give one message in English while hearing something in Portuguese. So that was just me giving full context to that, and you as the viewer can decide what you think going forward.
yeah, definitely. And like with translations, certain inflections could be missed where it's like inflections could change the meaning of the words. So, and there's
Hmm.
not always one-to-one direct translations of certain words. So
Yeah.
just added context to it. Anything else to add, or you?
Nope.
All right. Well, thank you for listening in again to Tobacco Road and Abroad. Like we said, full slate of games this weekend. We'll come at you next weekend with another show. But for now,
Hmm.
thank you for listening. Still trying to get up on Spotify. Spotify still thinks we're AI, so I guess we're just that much of bots. But once we're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, we'll let you know. But for right now, this will be going live on YouTube. But thank you guys for listening in, and see you next week.